Hi, welcome to Kloeker Education Foundation, where we provide quality content for amazing teachers and students. If you're joining us from our previous video on business risk, welcome back. If this is your first time, we're glad you're here. This is our Intro to Business series, and this lesson is on economics and economic activities. Let's dive in. Now, there are two objectives within this lesson. Objective A, to discuss the nature of economics, and Objective B, to explain economic activities and what that means. Now, starting with Objective A, to discuss the nature of economics, you might be thinking, why is this important? Imagine if you were to find a lamp with a genie inside, what would your wishes be? Now, no one can identify all of his or her wishes. Our wishes and wants are constantly changing as we grow older, as we mature, as our tastes develop, and as we achieve our goals, our wishes are very often and wants extended even further. It's purely human nature. Some might say that is the whole point of economics. Now, economics is the study of how to meet unlimited competing wants with limited resources. The process of deciding how to get the most with the least, obtaining the greatest satisfaction from using the least amount of resources. We see economics in action. Countries might ask, how can we meet the citizens' wants with the resources we have? Businesses ask, what goods, products, and services should we produce or provide to the consumer? And the consumer is going to ask, well, how should I spend our income to get the goods and services we want? Now, want is a funny word. Wants are desires for things that may or may not be required. Wants can generally be divided into two categories. Economic wants, things that one desires that can only be obtained by spending money, and non-economic wants. These are desires for things that can be obtained without the use of money. This lesson, we're going to be talking about economic wants. Now, wants are unlimited. Everyone has wants around the world, and everyone wants different things. Wants are constantly changing. And of course, we are competing over a small pool of limited resources to fulfill these wants. Wants might be concert tickets to your favorite country music artist, or movie tickets, getting a gift for someone, a new cell phone or tablet upgrade, a Netflix subscription, or a vacation to a destination. Resources are the items used to accomplish these activities, such as producing and providing goods and services. Resources fall into three categories. Natural resources, items found in nature and are used to produce goods and services. Human resources, people who are valued for their physical and mental work to produce the goods and services. And capital goods, all the manufactured or constructed items that are used to produce said goods and services. Resources are limited. Natural resources are limited by an increasing global population, by the difficulty and cost of obtaining said resources, the lack of technology in developing country to access or extract those resources. Natural resources may be running out, and of course, weather conditions and the environment also impact and limit natural resources. Human resources are limited because only some people are willing and able to work. There may be a shortage of workers that are experienced or certified in a profession because of a special training such as plumbing, welding, and doctors, or qualified employees and workers do not live where the job opportunities exist. Capital goods are limited by the amount of labor and natural resources available to produce them, the money available to purchase said resources, and the lack of technology in some parts of the world to make and transport said resources. Economics is greatly impacted by scarcity and the study of scarcity. And economizing that term, scarcity is caused by the gap of unlimited wants for goods and services and the resources that are limited. Our goods and services are scarce because not everyone can have everything he or she wants, and scarce resources must be allocated for their best use. Deciding which goods and services to purchase or provide so that the most satisfaction can be obtained out of the resources that are available, trying to obtain the greatest amount of satisfaction. Scarcity directly ties into opportunity cost. This is the benefit that is lost when you decide to use scarce resources for one purpose rather than another. For example, if you choose to study for an economics exam rather than going out with friends, your opportunity cost is the lost benefit of socializing with others. If a retailer like Chick-fil-A or Hobby Lobby is closed on Sundays, its opportunity cost is the lost benefits received from being open, aka the revenue it would have gained from being open on Sunday. And if a government spends more money on defense rather than education, the opportunity cost is the lost benefits from education. Before making a decision, you should examine the opportunity cost involved with that choice. Economic choices involve trade-offs. We must be willing to give up all or part of one thing in order to get something else, and our trade-offs should be based off of the opportunity cost involved. Now, there are some basic economic questions within economic activities like what will be produced, what and how many goods and services should be produced for society, how should society allocate its limited resources between production of capital goods and consumer goods. Questions like how will the products be produced? Will they be produced in the most efficient manner to use the limited resources, or will it be automated? Will it be done by hand? Of course, that is a question of efficiency. How will the products be allocated? How long will the goods and services be divided among the people? How will individuals, businesses, and governments share said products? Now, the economic decision making, the heart of economics is decision making. The objective for studying economics is to prepare people for A, effective decision making, and B, being a responsible citizen in society. Let's get into our second objective, explaining economic activities and what that means. Economic activities means getting what we need. We, of course, rely on others to provide us with some sorts of goods and services that we desire. These goods, services, and resources must move from one person to another, and so four economic activities make up this movement: consumption, production, exchange, and distribution. Consumption is the economic process of using goods and services. The ultimate goal of all economic activity is consumption. Anyone who uses goods and services is a consumer, and people want to consume the goods and services that satisfy their wants and their needs. Our second economic activity is production. Producers transform resources into valuable goods and services. The relationships between consumption and production must be balanced. That is supply and demand from economics. Production is the economic process or activity of producing these said goods and services. For consumption to occur, goods and services must be produced. Individuals who make these goods and services are, of course, called producers. Our third type of economic activity is exchange. Producers, consumers, and resource owners exchange money payments. These resource owners are people and organizations who provide human resources, natural resources, or capital goods for production, and most resource owners require some form of payment, usually money, for their resources. Payment for human resources would be things like wages, salaries, profits, or dividend interest. Payments for capital goods are things such as interest and rent. And producers make these money payments in order to get the resources that they use for production. After acquiring enough resources, producers are able to produce those goods and resources. Consumers make money payments to obtain these goods and services, and this is a giant circle. Exchanges among producers, consumers, and resource owners result in that circular movement of resources, goods and services, and money payments. Lastly, our economic activity is distribution. Distribution is the economic process or activity by which income is divided among resource owners and producers. Money is received by resource owners and producers, and this is of course known as income, and they use that to buy more goods and services. Resource owners and producers engage in some tug of war to divide how their income will be received from consumers. If producers don't think their incomes are large enough, they might not make any more goods and services, which would cause consumption to slow down or completely cease. And so the way they divide their income depends on that society's economic system. If resource owners don't think their incomes are large enough, they might not share those resources with producers anymore, and that would cause production to cease. Let's talk about money values. A wise man, great businessman, once said that to economists, price is a number, to consumers, price is a feeling. Consumers are going to pay more for things that bring them greater satisfaction. Goods and services that don't satisfy them are going to be less valuable. And the values attached to these money payments depend on productivity. Productive resources generally earn more than less productive ones. The demand, as people demand for resources, goods, and then services increase, so do the money payments and costs for them. And the availability of resources. Scarcity is going to drive price and value up as opposed to a more abundant resource. Let's take what we just talked about in this lesson, these ideas, and apply it to things we might be familiar with. Everyone participates in economic activities. Think about your school and educational institution. What does your school consume? What does your school end up producing? What resources do the schools use? Where do these resources come from? And how does the school take part in the exchange and distribution of activities like we just spoke about? Now let's take these ideas, these principles, and apply them to a situation so we can continue to build strong character and ethics in business through the gray zone. In this situation, the Howell family has owned Happy Acre Farms for 150 years. The state intends to build a highway that's going to run across the farm, and the Howells do not want to sell Happy Acres. The state has chosen to exercise its power of eminent domain and seize the farm without the family's consent. Is that fair for the state to do so to build the highway? Should the state be allowed to seize the property for the highway? What do you think? The state will have to pay the family for the property, but the state and not the Howells gets to set the purchase price for the farm. That wraps up our lesson on economic activities. Thanks for joining us. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check us out on Teachers Pay Teachers, YouTube, Rumble, and the Kloeker Education Foundation website. Our next lesson on competition is just a click away. I'll see you there.